If all goes according to President Biden's plan, the Supreme Court will have its first ever black female judge for the beginning of the next Supreme Court term. The historic nomination set to happen next month after the High Court's oldest Justice Stephen Breyer confirmed he'd retire at the end of the term. The announcement was not much of a surprise to many people. Reports say the 83-year-old liberal justice wanted to leave on his own terms. I spoke with constitutional expert and St. Xavier University professor Robert Shapiro about that and more. Professor Shapiro, good morning. Thanks for being with me. You know, the court is supposed to be outside the whole political process, but as we look at how this has unfolded, the timing of Justice Breyer's announcement, it does seem like politics is influencing all of this, no?
Oh, there's no question that that's the case. I mean, I think Justice Breyer was very conscious of what might happen in the 2022 elections, and he wanted to make sure that if something were to happen to him, that it would be possible to get this nominee through the Senate, and that may not be possible after the end of 2022.
I had a theory that while there was pressure on him to retire last year, he knew he had one more year to go, but that a reason for staying might be as the senior liberal justice, he could have some influence on the younger justices on the court. Number one, do you think that makes sense? Number two, did it make any difference that he was there?
Well, I do think that he had that very much in mind. He has a kind of mentorship approach to all of this, and he's, even though regarded as part of the liberal wing, somebody that really tries to find consensus on the court, and the court is having a little bit of difficulty with that, so it's very appropriate for him to stay. And I think that his staying through 2021 and now through the end of this term has had a positive influence on the court.
Whoever replaces him will be liberal, or at least left of center. And but my question is that he is the senior liberal on the court, and even though the balance of the court won't change because you'll get another liberal, but I think the chemistry of the court does. You know so much about this. Talk to me about the impact of that statement. The balance doesn't change, but the chemistry does.
Well, I think, picking up on what I just said, there was a great emphasis by Justice Breyer, which comes from an earlier day where there was an attempt to seek some kind of consensus on the court. And as you know, Chief Justice Roberts is very much interested in this. So having somebody new come in who doesn't really know the ropes and doesn't know the other justices to the same extent. Now, at least one of the nominees will know them pretty well. Two of the nominees will know them pretty well. But it's going to change the chemistry, and it may also make it less likely that the court can achieve consensus. So, yeah, it has a big impact on what happens. I mean, I think people overstate the extent to which politics plays a role on the court. Certainly does, but they overstate it. And they understate the way in which the justices themselves work together to try to reach some kind of conclusion that makes sense for the country as a whole.
Breyer, of course, his background was sort of an administrative law background, kind of a technical guy, although he was a legislative aide for Ted Kennedy. He understands politics. But how will history look back on him, aside from we know he's a liberal, whatever? What key decisions, what key things did he do that will be remembered?
Well, I can't say that he's going to have an enormous role to play in the history of the court, because his role has been somebody who's been seeking the center and seeking some kind of consensus. He's was often in the majority when there were liberals on the court, did not really step outside that that group. And so I don't think that he's going to be known for specific decisions so much as his kind of calming, consensus-building influence on the court as a whole.
As we talk now, President Biden has not named his nominee. It could happen at any time, probably won't for a little while. But that being said, I want to get your take on the leading candidates for it. Who are your top picks?
Well, there are three, I think, that everybody is talking about. One is Judge Brown Jackson, who has just been named less than a year ago to the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals. She was district court judge before that. There is Justice Kruger from the California Supreme Court, very, very, very intellectual, supreme intellect that she has. And then there is Judge Childs, who is the favorite of Representative Clyburn down in South Carolina. Those seem to be the three names that are emerging most, but I don't think you can ever rule out somebody that comes as a surprise, because there are many qualified black women in the country that could serve on the Supreme Court.
And finally, Brown Jackson was also a clerk for Breyer. That looks good. And she got a few Republican votes when she was vetted last time around. But does that mean you can count on those Republican votes when you're talking about the Supreme Court?
I don't think so. There are a few senators that have made a point of trying to find some nonpartisan kind of tenor for this. There's Senator Collins, Senator Murkowski. They might still vote for whomever Biden nominates, but I think it's going to be, very close to 50-50. I do think she's one of the leading candidates. She has very interesting background that no justice has ever had before, since she was in basically public interest type.
Right.
And I think she was a federal defender. So she would be a very interesting candidate. And as I was alluding to earlier, she knows some of the justices because she clerked up there, as did Justice Kruger out in California.
We're going to see how it plays out. Professor Rob Shapiro, if it were me, I'd be naming you, but I can't do that. So thank you, sir. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, Paul. Have a good day.
Still to come, back in session, state lawmakers head to the Capitol this week for a big speech by the governor. We're going to Springfield after this.